It's really getting that focus. I think it was a big thing and is a big thing when you're, because you went from running a business, owning it, I should say owning it and running it, to really owning and managing, which is a different thing. And when you spread out that much, it becomes tough. But
and it really does. It's the old saying, be careful what you wish for, because there's a lot of times where you think you can just, between managing the operations part and then physically managing your restaurant bar, being on the floor and being in the mix, is two different jobs, two different full-time jobs. And your quality of life most definitely is not that great when you're at that point.
Yeah. And Steve's got two beautiful daughters that he's got to make time for. But dispel real quick, just so we get it out of the way. Bar owners, in order to be successful, you got to be there at the location some amount of time. You cannot be a absentee owner.
I could not agree more. And that was especially true in the 90s. Now, fast forwarding, it's still true, but technology has come such a long ways in the sense of, with these apps, videos, cameras, your point of sale system has enabled you to have more control of what's going on and able to identify red flags much easier than being in the building at all the times. But I will say that one of the downfalls of any bar, one of the top 3 reasons why bars fail, is an absentee owner, 100% on top of that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just it's an interesting thing to me, because helping people start businesses, so many people say, I just want to invest in a bar. And it's like, you might as well just give your money to charity. Because if you can open a bar and hire a manager and pay them some amount of money and just expect at the end of each month there's going to be a windfall for you, you're going to be out of money real fast.
Yeah, and I've always noticed that, and again, I'll go back into the 90s, and a majority of the people that wanted to invest in bars in those days, when real estate was great and people were making great money, and most of the people that invested in bars in those days were guys that just that wanted to invest in a bar and say, hey, I own 5% of this, or they won't say what percentage, but hey, I own this place. Right. And we've seen that come and go. And then you've seen the people that invest in a bar, and I would never take any investment money from somebody that's like, this is my last $50,000. I would be like, I don't even do not give that to me. I won't take it, because the return, as is far and far between of what your return is going to be. You can do predictions and, run your, run your projections in the sense of like, I'll have your money back by this at this sales ratio. But as you know, we don't know what your sales are actually going to be. And I think that's what a lot of people misconceive is, they put their money in, and 2 months later you've been operating. Well, where's my disbursement?
Right. Yeah. I gotta make my mortgage payment. Come on, give me something.
I always take it, and it's great what you just said, in sense of somebody is investing money. Like, I look at them and say, if they lost it, they wouldn't care. That's their play money. That's just something they want to throw in there. That's something that they're taking a risk at.
Yeah.
Especially with a first startup type of bar that's not proven, maybe a newer operator, something like that.
So let's kind of jump to the birth of Social Tap. What made you get into this business at the time you did?
Well, as I said before, I had my hands, in several other entities, and I identified that my quality of life was not what I wanted it to be. It wasn't fun for me anymore. And I was starting a family, and I looked at my future and said, what do I need to do to continue to stay in this business and enjoy being in this business, and have family time, which continues to be important to me. So I made a conscious decision with one business partner who is also my main financial investor. And we just kind of looked at the portfolio and made a decision. Let's sell off our shares. Let's clean up everything and focus on this one concept, which was Social Tap Eatery, which fell into my lap in the sense of I just whipped something together because I came up and, I made the decision. I opened up another bar because I was able to do it. And I whipped this concept together, and I wasn't happy with the direction it was going. I wasn't spending any time in there, but I really thought the concept had great legs. And so we decided to get rid of everything and focus on one concept and grow that concept and put all our energy into one business. And smartest decision I ever made.
Okay, and you went from the one location of the one business to you now have 3 different locations.
Correct.
And
go ahead. What I was saying is I have 3. I've had several opportunities to grow it, but I'm happy where I'm at right now. And now I'm in a position to where if I find something that's great, and I'm back in, we played as a real estate deal as well now. So every Social Tap we own the building as well. My partner's a commercial real estate person. So now I have my 3 businesses, and we more look for great opportunities instead of wanting just to open a bar because we want to. Now it's more, we're ready to, but we're in no rush to.
Right. And the 2 locations in California, obviously, like you said, you picked them because they were good fits financially for the building and the real estate, but you're in Old Town Scottsdale with this one. Are you in similar marketplaces in California as well?
Somewhat. The one I would position, we're in San Diego, in the Gas Lamp District.
Yeah.
Right on the corner of it. We're right next to Padres Stadium at Petco Ballpark.
Okay.
And I will make that similar to Scottsdale in the sense of a high volume area of bars, a nightlife driven area of bars and restaurants. The one that I have in Ventura, California, it thrives on a street which is on Seaward, which has bars and restaurants, but it doesn't have that big infrastructure of nightlife. It's just, close to the beach and a different environment, but the concept still works there, and we still tweak it to that environment.
Yeah. So, and that gets into management. So you've got 3 different locations. Obviously, Old Town Scottsdale has the crowd it gets. In the Gaslight District, you're dealing with not only nightlife crowds, but huge event crowds, similar to things that happen at Westgate at a Cardinals or Coyotes game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you manage those different? I mean, you've got to put in place procedures, policies where you can be in Phoenix and still manage these. And I know technology is a huge helper, but how do you work with the people that you're putting in charge?
That truthfully comes down to, I'm fortunate enough right now, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, and my business partner is in San Diego, but he's not part of the operations, but he is able to use the term keep an eye on things in the sense of like our hiring. And then I'm very specific on hiring a general manager and bringing somebody in and operating the business. So when I open a place, I'll go down there for 4 to 6 weeks, go over the handbook, go over everything, run it the way that I want it run. And I will be next to my general manager for 2 weeks straight, just running it with him and how we want this done and how it runs it. And then it really comes down to communication in the sense of from the marketing standpoint to the operating standpoint, and a lot of phone calls and monthly visits, you know, maybe once a month, twice a month, really depending on how I'm feeling things are going and what time of the year it is. And like you said, it's no different than a TGF Fridays or something like that. They have a lot of locations, and it's literally you just from a corporate structure where you're running who's at the top, and then we pyramid down obviously and to see who's in charge of what. And then it's just direct reporting. You know, what's your marketing plan for the baseball season? I have them from marketing to operations to making sure that we're inputting policies are being followed where I'm not there and they're not playing the music that I want to play. The easy thing for me is between we move into technology, it's a great thing, but it can also be where you're micromanaging on your iPhone 24/7, because I can look at all 3 of my stores on my screen and I get a real-time sales. I get alert if there's something questionable that happened, and my phone is ding, 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 you know. And there are things that I can identify, and I can either respond to be like, you know, why was there a $25 tip on a $3 tab? Do I want to do that? No, but it does alert me that, hey, something's going on over there. And if it starts to happen more frequently, then there's where I can go in and say, this person seems to be working. This is happening quite frequently. And that's all just, you know, being in Arizona and that happening in California. And that in between video cameras, real-time video cameras, real-time up-to-date numbers and who's clocked in between, I can manage remotely on my phone. I can manage my labor cost, everything. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, and you're dealing with different laws. I mean, having 2 businesses in California, how the rules and regulations you have with that versus the rules here in Arizona. But what was your move to California based on the real estate opportunities versus staying here in the greater Phoenix area and doing downtown Phoenix, the Westgate area type things? Were those just there weren't the same opportunities for you to do it, or do you think those aren't the right markets for you?
That's a great question.
Well, I have to give credit to one of the students. They typed it in, so.
In my business, it's probably 50-50, maybe even 75-25. It is definitely a real estate play, the way that I've structured my business. When we see an opportunity for real estate that's in a location where a bar and restaurant would seem to fit, that's something that we're definitely going to identify and look at. And that's how California pretty much came about. As you said, California's got a lot of tough labor laws. You know, their payment structure is ridiculous. And, you know, it's the mandatory breaks. It's really tough to have somebody there that your floor manager spends more time there following regulations and making sure they're in compliance than they're really doing trying to drive sales at some point.
Yeah.
But if you pencil the numbers and you look at the real estate opportunity and you put a restaurant or bar in there, whether it's a social tap or anything else, your downfall is that, hey, the concept didn't work, but we have a property that its value has increased $200,000 over the past 2 years. That's how I approach anything that we do now.
And it's almost akin to holding that Series 6 license here in Arizona versus a restaurant bar 12 license, because your buy-in may be greater at the starting point, and buying property obviously versus leasing, it's going to cost you more, but your risk lessens in the fact that you close a business, you still have an asset that is a substantive asset to sell and recoup some of your costs and losses.
Absolutely. You know, I had a conversation with a couple gentlemen last night, I was saying, and they were talking about licenses. And I was like, I would always budget in a number 6 license, even though you're throwing in an extra $100,000 into your opening costs. That's something you're not going to lose, and that's an asset. So there's your fallback. So if you're investing that extra 100,000 and you're open for a year and you're just struggling, you've tried everything, it's not working, you chose not to sell it, so you close your doors, at least you know that you have $100,000,
something that you can get. Yeah.
And that stays with you, and that's a great asset to have.
Yeah.
A lot of, I think, as we talked about, the reasons why bars close, and one is, we talked about a absentee owner, and the number one, I believe, is just being undercapitalized and going in there with the assumption that, hey, we're going to get the doors open and we're going to be successful.
Right.
And that's my number reason that I think a lot of bars and restaurants fail.
Yeah. I mean, no, they expect profits to be as of the first month. And that's
Sure.
You've got to open in any business. And like you said, you've opened other businesses. And I know you've invested and dealt with other people in other businesses. It's if you don't plan for 6 months to a year of not having, and you aren't budgeted for that, your chance of failure is a lot greater.
Yeah, that was, I look at I definitely recommend the minimum 6 months of capital to be able to operate without having to dive in. It's, and there's so many unexpected costs, especially when you're pre-opening, that you didn't account for or just showed up. I think everybody comes in with this low number of a budget to open.
Yeah.
And as you start your build out or buying equipment, you run into quite a few things. And I would say that on the minimum, you're probably going to be $100,000 over budget, if not more, depending on the size of the building and what you want to do. And then you also get passionate where you're like, oh, but I really need this bar top. Well, the one you budgeted for was $25,000, but this one's amazing. All right, well, I'm going to spend an extra 25. And then at the end, when you get open and you look at it, you're like, holy cow, I'm $150,000 spent more. Well, you wanted that bar top, so we gave it to you. I mean, it's no different than remodeling your home,
Oh, yeah. Now, just because I don't think I'll ever forget this, and he's talking about remodeling and build outs. Steve is the only customer I ever had that I actually did hard labor and helping demo the old bar. And
I was hoping you were going to bring this up.
It's one of my fondest memories. We, had a couple of drinks and we were knocking down things in the bar before we started remodeling it. So that's when I knew this would be something that we'd be friends for a long time.
It worked out well because you would bring me samples, we would drink them, and then we'd work.
Yeah. And luckily, none of us lost any fingers, toes, legs, or limbs. So, it was a good thing. But you talked about being able to communicate with your managers. And I know when you had the bars here in Scottsdale, back when I was dealing with you on a regular basis, you would have weekly management meetings. Do you still do that, like with all 3 stores, where you hop them on a phone call or do something together? Or do you do them individually?
I do that individually. And the reason, unless I feel that there needs to be a little extra push, because I want my leader and manager to be accountable for his staff there. So I don't want to come in and undercut him and empower him. Okay. Do I mind playing the bad guy if there's some issues that we need to address? No. But I directly speak to my general manager at each location, telling me my concerns and also what I'm happy with, and we take it from there. And then what my concerns would be, make sure they're addressed. And if they're not addressed by the next meeting, then maybe we need to bring somebody else into the meeting. Okay. There's been very few times where I've felt the need that I needed to fly to California to find out what the heck is going on. Yeah. I've been fortunate in that, and I've had a lot of long-term general managers that I'm really happy with, because I've invested the time with them, and I think it's important to make sure that you keep them, and I pay them well, and they perform because they're empowered to run the business. And I almost from the outside, as long as my expectations are being reached, what I'm asking for, if you're staying within my brand, what I want done, and we're showing a profit, I'm happy with that. A majority of the time when I go to my businesses in California, I like to go down there and actually enjoy it and go sit down and have dinner and meet some of the new employees there. That's what I enjoy more. I don't enjoy going down there and I don't like this, and why is this like this, and why is this looking like that? And it does happen, but not as frequently as you would think.
And you brought up an interesting thing, because it's kind of my fault for doing this. I'm focused on what do you do when there's problems, what do you do when there's issues, and how do you handle those negatives. It's important for you to highlight and acknowledge the positives that are going on when you're managing people, especially from a distance.
I could not agree more. I am a person that I have a lot of positive, I try to give positive reinforcement. And as much as you have owners will be like, well, great job, but that's your job and that's what you're supposed to do. Like everybody knows that's your job, but it is nice to show some gratitude towards somebody, take them out to dinner, send them, if I'm not able to go down there, say, hey, I want you to go and I want you to take you and your 2 assistant managers and your head bartender, you guys go out to have dinner and put it on the company credit card because you guys did a great job this month and our liquor costs came in line, our labor costs came in line, and I really appreciate how hard you guys are working. To incentivize them is great. And when you incentivize and you give positive support, you get better results when there's a negative. When there's a negative, people tend to focus. I'm aware of the negative. I don't focus on the negative at first. I want to be able to fix the negative by having them be proud of what they're doing and then being able to identify, oh man, you're right. Our beer percentage is through the roof right now. I think, we got to figure out why that's happening, and I'm like, yeah, we do. Let's figure that out together and let's see what we got. So go check into it. It's the positive reinforcement. And I can be just as rough on somebody as the other guy. But the results I don't like doing, in the sense, and then you got to go back and do damage control. I don't want to apologize for someone, if I raise my voice and I was negative. I think you just get more done from a positive result.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think, like you said, with the incentives and saying, here, go to take these people to dinner from on the company card. When you do unique, random acts of kindness, I guess is the best, or acts of gratitude like that, it doesn't become expected, but it damn sure is appreciated. And the people know if they do well, there's a good chance there's something that you're going to say, some way you're going to say thank you to them. And it motivates them.
I'm telling you, there is nothing better than just telling someone that works for you, hey, thank you. You did a great job. Whether it's a text message, a phone call, those work just as good as buying them dinner or anything. Yeah. It shows appreciation. It shows that you care, and it shows that you appreciate their hard work. And the response is always going to get a positive response. You're never going to, I always use the word, stroke somebody and say, hey, great job, man. You did, and truly mean it. They're never going to be like, man, my owner's an asshole. Like you're never going to get that back. They're going to be like, yeah, that was really nice of him to reach out to me, and whether it's verbal, financial, you get the same result. My financial is based on performance. Yeah. I'm always appreciative of how hard they work. You can be a hard worker, but you're still not getting what I need to get done.
Right.
And so you say, look, this is what we need to focus on, and you're being positive and they're appreciating you're positive. I want you to hit that bonus. And here's where we're at. Like we're 15 days into this 30-day month, and we're looking like our liquor cost is coming in really high. This is how much money you got to spend. Can you make that? Because I want you to hit your bonus. And so I'm giving you the heads up that you need to figure out something, what's going on here. And I think that's where you get a lot of great performance out of your staff as well.
And there's sincerity behind it, and they know that you back up your words with actions, which is really good. Another question that one of the students asked is, we had a chapter and we talked a little bit previously about ethics, and there's a lot of options and lots of ways in the bar business to be unethical.
Absolutely.
As a operator, owner of a bar, how do you do that? And also, how do you ensure that, and it probably goes down to your bar staff and your waiters and waitresses, how do you make sure they're not being unethical in what they do and how they do it?
Well, let's define unethical. Are you meaning towards their behavior or more towards a financial unethically stealing or not ringing in drinks? And then then there's the sexual harassment unethical side of it as well. Those are two big problems in business that are but two separate problems.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about like the service end of it, where especially, and I mean this goes back decades and generations and whatnot, when bartenders get that customer that says, I want a Grey Goose spicy Bloody Mary, and every bartender in the world knows you can pour the world's worst vodka in there, and once you put the pepper, the Tabasco, and the tomato juice in it, no one's going to know what they're drinking. And you can charge them the $15 for the Grey Goose Bloody Mary and give them the 37-cent vodka.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make sure your bar doesn't get that reputation?
Well, that's a great question as well. And you and I both know that happens at a lot of places, at the mom and pop, where they're taking, I'll use Grey Goose and pouring it into a Svedka bottle. That is something that would be happening behind the scene, and that becomes something that you can control, and that's based on what's getting rung in the POS. So if I'm looking at something and I'm like, man, like we're selling a lot of Grey Goose, but we're not ordering any. So how did I sell a case of Grey Goose on my POS system because they're ringing in the Grey Goose, but I didn't buy any Grey Goose, but I bought a hell of a lot of Svedka vodka.
Right.
That's where you're the back of the house and you're looking at that. That's how I'm able to tell if a bartender is being unethical. And a lot of the times too, where the way that your bar is designed and set up, if a customer, and then if you literally just went and this guy ordered a Grey Goose, and the guys, I'm a creature of habit, but when I sit at a bar, I'm usually watching my drink get made, a lot of the times. And you're the same way, I'm sure. Business. And I mean, I've ordered a martini where I'm a big happy, like alcohol, but you definitely can tell the difference between some stuff, whether like if you drink a Jack Daniels and they serve you some bottom of the barrel whiskey, you can definitely tell that. I don't think if you're a bar owner behind the bar and you're trying to manage your profit and you're trying to grow your profit more, that's the person that's going to be pouring a drink like that. Now, if a bartender is pouring you a drink, it doesn't really benefit the bartender to pour you a well vodka when you order Grey Goose, because he wants you to drink that Grey Goose.
Right.
And unless it's a cash transaction, which that's another whole different story, because then he's going to charge $15 for that Grey Goose drink, and he pours that Grey Goose drink, and doesn't matter because he's going to keep that if he wanted to steal that money anyways.
Yeah, I guess it's more like, because you brought up the idea that in the middle of the month you tell your GMs, hey, you're kind of off on numbers, you're running a little bit high. That person puts pressure on the bartenders. Hey, we've got to watch our pours. We got to do whatever. And is that a way to make sales appear better, more profitable, to bring their numbers in line, to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and it really is. I mean, you can put somebody in a panic mode where the owner is identifying something and telling the GM is going to tell his bartenders, and he's going to put the pressure on them. You know, the bartenders are these guys that are going to make sure that the GM is getting his bonus by what they're pouring. And that's where the general manager is really watching what's going on. So the incentive for the general manager or the bar manager, because I will give an incentive to my bar manager and to my general manager. So if this bar manager is watching this, he's going to always be on the lookout for things that are going wrong, because if his bartenders are not doing something correctly, it's going to affect his bonus.
Yeah.
And if the GM is watching the bar manager and the bar manager is not watching the bartenders, then that affects the GM's bonus as well. So there's always the financial aspect to it. Can you manipulate numbers? Of course you can. You can manipulate physical alcohol. You can manipulate books. You can manipulate what you're ringing on the system. Just how much you want to put into your security measures and policy measures on how things are done.
Yeah, and it goes back to the hiring issues, like you said. I mean, you spent a lot of time setting up expectations and duties and responsibilities for all these different positions you're hiring people for, so that there's a clear idea that you bring in Joe as a bar manager. Joe knows exactly what his job is, his duties, responsibilities, and all that. And that's set up for success is almost as important as anything going forward. If you don't get them all on the right page to start successfully, they're not going to be successful.
Absolutely. I mean, it shows anymore, like from a server, what is your responsibility? What is your role as a server? What is your role as a bartender? Now, do I want to give these bartenders the opportunity, and giving my bar manager the tools to be successful is already all implemented. Now it's up to him to execute those and keep track of those. And the more that everyone is on the same page, enforcing policies, and that's a struggle that we run into sometimes, where you have 3 managers, you have your general manager and a couple assistant managers, and 2 of the managers enforce policies more than the other manager. Oh, well, you know, Dave lets us do this, but John and Kelly don't. That's where we run into a big struggle as well. And a lot of things that I really try to stress and enforce, that the management team has all got to be on the same page, because water cooler talk between the staff and one manager really creates a bad environment and a lot of animosity. And as hard as that is to manage, it's a really important component to having people being happy at their job and without a lot of animosity going on between other staff members and other managers.
Yeah, and that makes sense. The other thing, crisis management as a manager and owner. I mean, the easy question is the crisis of COVID, but we're going to skip that for now. I mean, at a bar, you've got all sorts of potential bad things that can happen. How do you plan for that stuff before it happens, and get, again, your teams in all these places? Because typically, I mean, like you said, you like your time at midnight, 1 a.m. You're not at these bars. You're at home with your family. So how do you get them empowered to deal with the potential crises that may happen in a restaurant or bar?
That's 100% education. And what I mean by education, my staff is educated on liquor laws. They're educated on what to identify when a potential crisis is about to happen. They're able to identify someone that's just coming in the front door that's overserved. We know that that person is going to be a high risk of being a problem, and a way to eliminate that is saying, sorry, sir, I can't let you in, you're too intoxicated.
Right.
It's truly making sure that your staff understands the importance of from your doorman to your busser to your bartender that can identify something that's happened. When you overhear a couple guys arguing in a corner, you know, or someone bumps somebody, you have to address that immediately, because if you just let it go, chances are when there's alcohol involved, it's going to escalate into something else.
Yeah.
And by taking, you know, nowadays, bartenders, managers, they all have to be somewhat certified in the sense of what to look for, what to identify in the sense of this guy's been overserved. You can look at somebody that's being irrational, someone that's being aggressive, maybe someone that looks really depressed. There's all kinds of things. It's really just being educated on what to identify that's going to eliminate 85% of problems.
Yeah.
You know, I don't run into that very frequently because my place is more of a restaurant bar. But I did have an incident first Sunday of football, you know, where my door guys did a great job. They just did not let these guys in, which escalated into them being frustrated because they couldn't get in. And, you know, when we talk now, Brent, back in the day, you didn't want to bring the police in because it was just like, you don't want to get them involved because it makes you look bad, and then you don't want anybody around there. Now it actually works for you, because anytime that there's an incident or something that is a potential incident, you can alleviate that, because once the police are involved, that obviously everybody stops.
Yeah.
And now the police actually encourage you to call them. It doesn't work against you. It actually works for you, as in back in the day, it used to work against you.
Right.
They almost incentivize you. They appreciate you calling because it keeps their job easier. Because if you didn't do something about, and I'm kind of going off track here a little bit, but if you didn't do something about an incident that you had in your bar and you kicked these guys out and they got in a big brawl, they're just going to go somewhere else and it's not going to stop. So if you're able to, like, if it happened at your location, the chances are that it's going to go happen somewhere else because people are drunk and aggressive and not making very good decisions. And if you can eliminate that at your bar and then bring in the authorities to eliminate it from happening anywhere else, it's a big help.
That's good. And I think of like the other potential crises and whatnot. I mean, you read about how like police officers go into a Starbucks and Starbucks says, we don't want to serve them. Or in one case, there was a black man sitting at a Starbucks waiting for people, and they said, you need to leave because you haven't ordered anything yet. And you assume a company like Starbucks educates their people too. And luckily, hopefully you haven't had to deal with issues like that, but what power do your GMs have, or your on-site managers, to answer a call from when a reporter calls and says, hey, I heard this happened at Social Ventura, or this happened at the Old Town location, or whatever? How do you think about things like that, and how do you put plans in place to deal with those types of troubles?
Well, I mean, it's really based on the severity of the incident, obviously, and where my managers always know that if it looks like this is something that could be potentially local news to national news, if there was some kind of discrimination done or something that's, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in the country today, they always need to refer to myself.
Yeah.
That's where I would look at it, and then I would educate myself on exactly what happened before I'm able to give a statement on that. And it's not that you're trying to hide anything, but you just want to make sure that anything that's being said on a particular incident or something like that, that you have all the facts in front of you, because as you know, people are really quick to judge. The media is quick to judge. And sometimes there's really nothing you can do about it until you're able to give a statement. And when there's a lot of bad energy escalating and an incident happened, which seems to be happening a lot more frequently now than it has in the past, it's definitely a new topic that needs to be brought up and identified. I mean, like you said, there was a Starbucks, when they had an incident like that, they closed down every Starbucks for a couple of days, didn't they? And
yeah, do training, yeah,
on that, and it's a constant, identifying things that could happen, and updating your manual, your company manual. and saying, you know, if this happens, then this is something you identify. Always referring to the owner and not taking it upon yourself to talk to the press or to talk to, obviously if it's an incident where the police are involved, your general manager, or they're going to have to give statements.
Right.
And that's because that's what they're there for and they need to do that. But I've always want to know, like, I want to be fully aware of what happened before I'm going to give a statement or find out exactly every detail known before moving forward on any of that.
And like, what's your policy with the problems or events at the bars? I mean, the worst thing possible, I'm sure, that would get you upset is if you wake up in the morning, you hop onto your phone, onto Twitter or Facebook, and all of a sudden find out Social Tap's trending because of something that happened overnight, and you notice you've got no text messages, emails, phone calls from the manager that was working last night. I mean, so your communication, what do you expect from your people as far as communicating to you, even if they feel like they've handled it?
Every one of my general managers would know to 100%. It doesn't matter if it's 1 in the morning or 4 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. That definitely needs to be alerted and let the, you know, an owner know it, myself or anybody else would be in that position, any company, to understand that. I mean, to this, you know, I'll get a, you know, if they're counting down a safe, you know, I'll get a call and say, hey, for some reason, you know, in Scottsdale, because I'm more on hands down here, you know, the safe short $200. Did you take a payout and not forget to put something in there or whatever? I have no problem. My policy is reach out to me anytime. I want to know. I would be really frustrated if they took it upon themselves. If it was an incident that needed to be addressed right there and then, if it was something that could be addressed in the morning, I'll come in, or, you know, each location has a management group text message, and we also have a email that shoots out to everybody. So if I get an email or a text message from a group, whether it's, I'm able to get informed on that immediately. Or, you know, coming in the morning, it's like, oh, I'll address that in the morning. You know, there's quick to do answers, and then there's crisis management where you have to get on that right away.
Yeah, but even like with the small problems or whatever, I mean, it's like you said, not things you have to get out of bed at 2 in the morning and deal with, but you set up your business and your management teams and your system where they're notifying you before third parties notify you.
Correct.
And that's important when you're setting up these teams and working to create that empowerment and everything else. They still have to realize that when someone says Social Tap, it connects to Steve McDonald.
Absolutely.
In the realm of things, and they're working with your reputation, your history, your name, and they have to be aware of that.
You know, there's an old saying where you empower your upper management, where you tell them, you know, take ownership, responsibility, and sometimes that can be misconstrued and get taken a little bit far. It's because, well, I handled it. You didn't even know about that, and I'm like, yes, I did need to know about that. And important there, I appreciate the fact that you handled it, but I want to know about it, and then I want to know what you did to handle it to make sure that there was something, that there could be an underlying issue that he or she's not aware of, for a big issue. And I'll give you a great example. It's funny because I had gotten a call. I got a text message, and I looked at it, and it was this. Literally, this was referring to as the safe was short $200. Yeah. And so I had not only my closing manager and the closing bartender sat there for an hour and a half trying to figure out this $200, you know, and I'm looking, okay, so you guys basically just spent about $75 in labor trying to find this $200. And I said, you know, if you went through and you looked like you did everything right and I haven't responded, leave me, you know, I'll see the text message in the morning. I'm going to come in, and the opening manager or whoever's looking at that is going to have a fresh set of eyes on it, you know. And it turned out I gave a $200 payout to somebody that needed to borrow some money, one of my cooks, and I didn't write the note and put it in a deposit bag to say, hey, I gave this gentleman $200.
Right.
Completely my fault. And that could have been addressed that easy the next morning. And that happens few and far between, but I actually completely took 100% responsibility for it. I was running and he told me he was struggling on something. I'm like, here you go, because, and that's something where it's a minimal thing to where I don't want you to spend 3 hours trying to figure out something like that. Does that answer your question? I hope that gets
Oh yeah, no, it does. I mean, but I'm like even thinking, I mean, like, I know, again, I mean, I'm going to go back to our basis of how we started our relationship, and I was your sales rep, and there were times I needed to make numbers, and when I dealt with you, I was dealing with the owner, but there were other bars I went to where I'm dealing with the bartender or the bar manager who's doing the ordering, but isn't the owner or the operator. And I convince that person to take more than they need, sign up for a program they really don't need to be part of. And I turn around and I send the owner, after I win my incentive, a little thank you note that says, hey, I really appreciate it. And they had no idea it had happened. Yep. So, I mean, there's just so many scenarios that I think you have to deal with and worry about, where you've got people who you are giving the power of running your business to know that they're still communicating with you.
I'm trying to recall, what was that vodka that you used to push on me to hit your numbers? What was that?
I don't remember offhand.
I mean, and again, those are so many questions and so many moving parts in this type of operation, to where if my managers bought 8 cases not only because my sales rep needed to make the numbers, but he got a huge case discount on it, maybe it makes sense.
Yeah.
If we're talking a few $100, but she's like, hey, my bar manager is a female, that's why I keep saying she, but like if she made this purchase and said, hey, I'm like, why the heck did you buy, 10 cases of this? Well, I got it for $8 a bottle if I bought this case and it helps so-and-so. I'm like, oh, great deal, because it's something that we go through a lot. Now, if she went and bought 10 cases of Galliano, which you probably go through one bottle a year if you're lucky, then that's where I would have a problem at it. And I would hope that my bar manager or general manager is educated well enough to know that that was not a good deal.
Right.
But empowering your staff or your managers to make those type of decisions is something you kind of have to let go of, and you have to empower them to make the right decisions on that. Now, yeah. At the end of the day, if their liquor cost is coming in at a 16% and they purchase that, I'm okay with that, because that's a great percentage to come in at,
Sure. Yeah, I guess I look at it as, again, it gets the communication aspect. Not necessarily that they're going to call you, ask permission, because you're giving them the right to do it, but the notification. Whereas instead of at the end of the week or 2 weeks, a month, where you're reviewing invoices and you have to call and ask. I mean, it's like, I compare it to married life. I mean, I look at my credit card statements at the end of the month and I have to ask my wife, what were you doing at Dillard's? Oh yeah, I didn't tell you I got that. And it's not anything that I care that she got, but that you have to ask.
Correct.
And when you're dealing with management, that's a tricky thing. When the riots happened in the summer over Fashion Square, did it come down at all to you, or did it pretty much stay north of Camelback?
It stayed right at Camelback, yeah. Which was really an interesting story, because I was completely surprised that this was happening in Scottsdale, Arizona, which nobody would expect.
Yeah.
I was having dinner with my girlfriend right up the street, and we're watching on our cameras as I have gotten text messages from the Scottsdale PD and a group text with all the owners. Here's what's going down. We need to close immediately. And I'm frantically sending text messages to my staff. Close her down. You don't need to clean anything up. I just want doors locked. Everybody out of there. Get home safe. Don't worry about, protecting anything. That's not your job. I'm sure that's okay. And thankfully, it didn't come. It literally came 3 blocks from my place. And I was fortunate to not see any damage, but you know, driving right past it every day was definitely an eye opener. That's for sure.
Yeah. And like we talked on the phone before we got here. I mean, you're basically reopening for the third time in 2020 right now.
Yeah. Uh,
And by no means are you for sure it's going to be the last time you have to reopen in 2020.
yeah.
How do you deal with that? I mean, you've got, again, you got staffing issues, you've got marketing issues, you've got safety issues. I mean, there's just so much, and I don't know a better word to say, but just so much shit thrown on your plate to say, hey, okay, we're going to let you guys do this, figure it out, with really no guidance.
Truly, by far, the most challenging time I've ever had to deal with in this business. And you hit everyone between opening, reopening, hiring, rehiring, and just the unclarity of what you're allowed to do and not to do. I mean, things were changing day by day, you know, per the governor, per, you know, the mayor, what you can do, what you can't do. Can you open? Can you close? Can you sell to go? Can you not sell to go? And I had more challenges because of my liquor license, and I'm a number 6. I have a number 6 liquor license, but I operate as a restaurant, and I fell into that category where they closed all the number 6s, but 12s were allowed to stay open. You know, 6s and 12s and that kind of stuff.
And let me explain real quick, just so everyone understands.
Sure.
A Series 6 liquor license are for bars, and there's no minimum requirements for how much food you sell versus how much alcohol you sell as a percentage of your total revenue. A Series 12 license is for restaurants to have as an option where, so long as you sell 40% of your sales in food, you qualify for the Series 12 license. The 6 license, like we talked about earlier, is an asset you buy. It's costing about $100,000 right now to buy and own one. A Series 12 license, there's an unlimited amount of them available from the city. It costs you about $5,000 to apply for and get a Series 12 license, but it's not an asset you own and that you could turn around and sell. So
it's basically an expensive permit, pretty much.
So, all right, so continue. You picked and chose to have the Series 6 license. So like you said, at the end of the day, you've got that asset.
Correct. And I fell into this situation to where obviously a lot of the culprits that contributed to the national news and the possible spread of the COVID was because these bars were opening up and just having a free-for-all. And that was disappointing. And then when we got shut down and they allowed everybody to do takeout and they made exceptions for the takeout, works for some people, it doesn't work for anybody. And then when they came back and in phase 2, when we closed everybody down, and they were saying, they blanketed it in the statement of, if you have a number 6 or a number 7, which is just another bar number, as you know, a license number, they all had to close. And I had a 6 because I owned it, as you said, but I still operated as a restaurant. I fought it. I stayed open. Honestly, I stayed open thinking, well, I'm still a restaurant. My numbers are 40%. I check every box that indicates per the Department of Liquor that I am a restaurant. I don't have a dance floor. I don't have pool tables. I have a commercial sized kitchen. My food is over 40%. There's quite a bit of stuff that goes into identifying that. I just stayed open without even a thought of thinking they were going to come after me. And then after about 5 days, I had this Scottsdale Police Department come by and say, hey, you need to close up. And I said, I'm a restaurant. And they're like, well, you have a 6. I have a great relationship with Scottsdale PD. I explained my situation. They allowed me to stay open, but I did have to get the blessing from the Department of Liquor or whether the governor, Doug Ducey, was going to make exceptions. Another week went by, I didn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden I get a Department of Liquor stopping by and saying, I need to close. And I said, well, I'm a restaurant. Here's my numbers from the day I've opened. Here's my, well, we're just following the governor's orders. And I said, well, I definitely need to have a conversation with the director of the Department of Liquor. Well, you have to bring that up with him. A couple days later, got a phone call back, and we talked for 45 minutes. I pled my case, and at the end of the day, he said he's just following the governor's order, and I needed a shutdown.
Yeah.
And it was really frustrating. And there was a few other bars that were in that same situation. We just got thrown into a category, which isn't true, because the liquor license does not identify who you are. It identifies on what you're allowed to do with that license. With a number 6, like you said, you can sell liquor to go. You can do a lot of other things with it. That's great. I was more frustrated because he allowed restaurants with 12s. He actually made an amendment where he was allowing them to sell liquor to go, which normally they're not allowed to. So that was even more frustrating for me. I consulted with my attorney, with my liquor agent, and we made the decision not to fight it because it could open up, more problems down the road if my liquor license gets suspended and then reissuing it and everything else. So I played the game. I pushed it as far as I could, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't worth the negativity that could have come from it and the loss of business if they did choose to suspend my license. They were under a lot of pressure, the Department of Liquor and Scottsdale PD, because we made national news when a lot of that was happening. So this way, when the second phase came in, they really enforced it because they didn't want the governor, the mayor, or the Scottsdale PD to have that kind of slap in the face anymore. And I somewhat understood it. It would have been nice for them to make a decision to say, if you are a restaurant, but you do have a 6, just, show us where you're at on that, and we'll allow that to continue to operate.
Yeah.
But it didn't.
Because like you said, the basis for, there's places with 12 licenses that are more of a bar than a restaurant.
Which was even more exploited when all the 6s closed, then all the 12s, all of a sudden bars,
Yeah. And
for anybody, but the pandemic definitely caused a lot of issues. There's a lot of bars and restaurants that benefit from it, and then there's a lot of bars and restaurants that were decimated by it. That's just how it goes.
do you think, and I'll end on this one as the last question.
Sure.
Do you think it's going to change the bar restaurant business, what we are going through and have gone through coming out of it? Are there things that we're going to see differently when it comes to bars and restaurants?
Another great question. Was that yours?
That one's mine.
I don't have an exact answer, but a few things that I identified that I have personally experienced is, man, I saved a lot of money not going out, and
Yeah.
I enjoy cooking at home. I think that there's still people living in that right now and still scared to, dip their toe in the water to see where they're at. Because it was quite, whether it was 3-4 months or however time it was, people started to adapt to this lifestyle now. So this could have been a guy or a couple or a man or a woman that went out 3 nights a week, and now they spent 6 months not being able to go out 3 nights a week, and they said, man, I feel great. My whole lifestyle has changed now. So that person, you've taken that person that was maybe borderline thinking, do I want to grow up and be an adult, or do I want to stay in my party phase and go hit the nightclubs 3 nights a week? That decision was made for them because they didn't have a choice. So now that they've got that conscious choice of, I feel great, I get more done, I don't want to go out ever again like I used to. Thank gosh this happened. And then on the other side, you have people that are just, trapped at home and being like, I just can't wait to go out again. I think there's both sides of it. I don't know from a standpoint to where restaurants and bars are always going to be back the same they will. I truly believe it will go back to where it was at some point, probably sooner than later. I'll give you a great example. I was having a conversation with somebody about a bar, And this bar in Scottsdale, which there's several of them, that was shut down. They're a bar, but they do serve food. So, but the Department of Liquor wants them to operate as a restaurant. I was like, well, what's so hard about it? Why can't you? And then I started thinking about it, and it was brought to my attention that they're known for how they are. So then when these people come back to that and they go to this, to what they were, and they're not getting that, then they're like, oh, I don't want to go back there anymore. That place is horrible. Like, we don't get to dance on the tables. We don't get to do this anymore. So this place is no fun anymore. Right. So they made a conscious decision of, I'm not even going to open to try to operate like a restaurant, because that's not who we are. And we're just going to get ourselves in trouble, because the expectations of people coming in there are going to want to party and dance on the tables, and not them being allowed to it. So it's almost like a negative. So they're basing it on, we're going to stay closed until we're allowed to dance on the tables again. And I see a lot of that happening as well.
That makes sense. And I kind of look at it as like, I mean, when, and this shows how old I am. When they started outlawing smoking in bars, people were like, well, everyone's going to drink at home. They're not going to go to bars. When the DUI laws got increased and the penalties became worse and worse, people were like, well, that's going to keep people from going to bars because they don't want to get a DUI and they're going to drink at home. It seems like we keep putting obstacles in front of the bar business to continue to succeed, but you guys always find a way to do it. And or there's just a need that there's a crap load of alcoholics in Arizona and we just need a place to go drink. I don't know. But it seems like if you've created a product that there is a customer for, and no matter what the hurdle is, they're gonna find their way back to you.
Well, I agree. And I don't believe it's all based on just strictly alcohol. It's based on just socializing with people. Yeah. Wow, these people that are single that want to go out to bars to meet people are always going to want to do that. That's their go-to, whether there's alcohol involved or not. So not only the alcohol part of it,
the whole atmosphere.
I mean, I felt like I was affected where I haven't been able to take my kids to a movie, and I really, or I was not able to go out to dinner. I didn't think it was going to affect me, but honestly, like, you could start to see the tipping point where it was like, we got to get places open because people are starting to get a little reckless now. And you could see that that was building up. Like, we've shut down long enough. We need to make some decisions here.
Right.
And I think that was a big part of why we had to reopen. Not only the COVID cases and the positivity rate, but you could just feel people really getting anxious and ready to get back to some type of normalcy.
Yeah, and doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. But all right, well, I kept you over an hour. I appreciate it.
It was enjoyable. I love talking about this stuff. It was great. Thank you for having
me. Yeah, for you guys, if you ever make your way down to Old Town Scottsdale, Social Tap Eatery is a great place to go. I don't get there enough, but once things get open again, I will definitely be down there to hang out and watch some football and have some food. It's great food. And thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any questions for Steve before I let him get back to his work? All righty. Well, thank you, sir. And I'll talk to you soon. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Okay. So I saw, thank you for those that typed in questions on the chat. It's always fun to ask different questions. And I'm glad to see a couple of you like these classes. I think it's just a neat way to apply what the chapter talks about into people that actually do this for a living. So hopefully Steve was able to give you guys some insight. You learned some things from him, and we will keep trying to find new and interesting people that talk and contribute to the class. Anybody have any questions about the chapter before I let you go home and start your weekend? No questions? All right. Well, you all have a good one and take it easy. And I will see you on Tuesday morning.
You as well. See you all on Tuesday. Take care.